Okay, let's just get right into it. Today, I'm making the sculpture that you have been waiting for. And it's a monkey. Well, it's part of the Zodiac. The Chinese Zodiac with all the animals. Here's 3 that I already made. The rat, the boar, the rabbit. Now, I'm keeping my sculptures close by just for reference so that I make them all similar in size. Just a little too big, let's take some of that off. Oh, what a cute looking monolith. But not perfect, so let's just trim that part off. And some more. There we go. Let's pat it back and around. Oh, wait, let's look at my references. Hey, so I'm making this not because I'm super into the Zodiac personalities, but because I'm super into Fruits Basket, which is a manga and anime series originally by Natsuki Takiya. Hope I didn't butcher that name too badly. I love that series, and so I'm making my own set of junishi, or why am I trying to say words in Japanese? Anyway, I've already made 6 of the animals. I have the dog, the snake, and a cat. And the cat makes sense. If you've read Fruits Basket, you'll know that there's also a cat, even though that's not part of the regular Chinese Zodiac. But let's see what I'm doing here. Oh, I'm adding the legs. And you know what? Let me tell you a little secret here. This is just the first rendition of the legs. These are going to get cut off. Yep, so if you're looking at them and going, wow, it looks like a frog. Yes, and it won't when it's done. But, you know, sometimes when you're making stuff, you go through these different stages. And sometimes that first stage is just bad. And that's okay, because clay is really forgiving. Let me put on that tail nub real quick. But yeah, sometimes when you're making art, you have to get the bad crap out of your system before you can make the good stuff. And it's just one of those things. So I'm gonna put these arms on here because the legs are looking weird, but maybe if I get the arms on, it'll start to look right. There's this picture I saw once that I remember whenever I go through an experience like this, that is the stages of creativity or creating. Let me see if I can put that on screen for you. Yep, there it is. You can see there are 6 stages. Number 1 is, this is amazing. 2, this is tricky. And 3, this is crap. Which is kind of where the monkey is right now. I don't really go into I am crap. Not a lot. Aw, look at the ears. And then hopefully you push through this is crap or I am crap and you get to this might be okay, and then keep going until this is amazing again. Although, let's be honest, sometimes we abandon projects before we get back to amazing. But here's that big moment. Off with the legs. All the way off. Okay, there we go. Back to square. This isn't square 1. Square 2? 3? I don't know. Partway in. His head's looking good though. Let's put some belly on him. He needs to be a little bit rounder to be more like the references I'm looking at. So let's put those legs back on. We're going to do them different this time. Much smaller and much more blended into the body. I made the mistake of trying to attach the legs on the outside of the torso instead of in line with it. At the time I thought I was making it in line, but there was just too much clay there to do what I needed to do. And that's why it's so important to have references. That way, if you feel like something's going wrong, it's not working the way it should, you have a picture to look back on and figure out what went wrong. I did some research on different types of Asian monkeys, and the one I settled on was this word on the screen, which Google says is pronounced rhesus macaque. So here you can see I'm attaching the lower half of the legs, and they don't have feet on yet. I'll get to feet later. But when I'm doing sculpture like this, I like to look at a lot of references, and in order to do that, I needed to know what kind of monkey I was looking at. Do I say monkey weird? Monkey? Anyway. So I love sculpting animals, painting them, and one of my ways that I get ready for this is I look up a lot of images from different angles, especially on sculpture, because I want to see the animal from all angles. And I also want to see how the animal moves. How do its limbs bend? What are normal ways for it to sit or to stand? And I want to capture that in the way that I portray it in my sculpture. I want it to feel realistic, not only in proportion, but in a natural pose. And I also want you to feel like it could move at any second. and I want the way that it's sitting to communicate an emotion. I want you to kind of feel like you understand what the animal is feeling or thinking. Even if animal emotions aren't exactly the same as human, they still are so expressive, and I want you to see that expression in the way that I sculpt them, in the body posture I give them. I want you to know if the dog is looking at you curiously or in anger. I want you to know if the lizard is chillin' or if he's about to go catch something. And if you don't know, in Fruits Basket, there are characters who are cursed by these Zodiac animals. They turn into them in points of high stress, or if they're hugged by a member of the opposite sex. But Ritsu is the character who turns into the monkey, and he is very anxious. His anxiety runs high all the time. And there's also one of the main characters, Toru. The story is mostly told from her perspective, and her kindness and acceptance is the catalyst that drives the rest of the story and changes the lives of the members of the Zodiac. When Ritsu meets Toru and accidentally gets turned into the monkey, there is this moment of hope and surprise because she's not judgmental the way that all of those cursed by the Zodiac animals have been taught to think, that they will be outcasts in society. And so I wanted to capture that sense of hope and wonder, but also uncertainty and anxiety. And I think I got there by the end of the sculpture. But those complicated of emotions can be a big ask for a casual observer, so I hope that somebody just casually looking at my sculpture sees curiosity, sees maybe hesitancy or shyness. But if they don't get the emotions, I hope at the very least they think, that's a cute monkey, and they don't have those intrusive thoughts of something looks off about this or it doesn't look natural. Because usually when we see something that looks right, we don't have that thought of, that looks really correct. We just don't think about it looking weird, and we appreciate it. Maybe we think, oh, it's cute, or oh, it's sweet, or oh, I don't like monkeys. That would be my husband. But moving on. Look at him, he's really coming together now. His legs are much better proportioned to his body, and they don't stand outside of his torso like a frog. And the legs are a little bit asymmetrical, even though animals are symmetrical, right? Left and right side looking pretty similar. They don't normally sit perfectly symmetrically, so having the legs slightly different from each other makes the pose feel more natural. Also, the feet are now attached, so that feels more natural too. Whenever I start working on a new part of the monkey, I look at new reference photos. I'm looking at references from that angle or to look at that particular body part that I'm working at. And right here you can see I'm working on the feet, and the feet were the hardest part to find a picture of. Most of the pictures that I could find, you could see the legs, but then the feet were hidden by like grass, or maybe there was just a tree branch in the foreground or something like that, or their feet were kind of like tucked under their fur. So for the feet, I really relied on that cartoon drawing in the manga. So the feet may be the least realistic portion of the monkey, but that's okay because I'm not going for strict realism here. Oh yeah, I wonder if you're wondering how I came up with the rhesus macaque as my reference image. So when I started doing my research, I was like, I need to pick one monkey to look at, because monkeys look different, right? Like a spider monkey doesn't look like an orangutan, doesn't look like a gorilla, doesn't look like a chimpanzee. I'm running on too long. Anyway, I needed to pick one monkey, and I figured since it's a manga, it's probably a Japanese monkey that the artist was referencing. So I looked up Japanese monkeys, and it's funny because I think other people have wondered what kind of monkey Ritsu is, because there was a whole Reddit thread, and they talked about a couple different monkeys, but the rhesus macaque seemed the most likely. It was also the first result I got when I looked up just Japanese monkeys. And when I looked at them for myself, I did notice that their ears have a little bit of a point to them, just like the drawing of Ritsu. The only drawback is that the rhesus macaque has a cut-off tail, like naturally it's a shorter kind of a stump of a tail. But digging a little deeper, I found that there's only one type of monkey native to Japan. So rhesus macaque seemed like the only real answer, and it's probably just that the artist decided to take some liberty and draw a longer tail. In the Reddit thread, they mentioned some other thematic reasons that the tail might be longer, but I don't know, I can see myself as an artist just deciding stylistically to do it as well. Maybe it's a theme, maybe it's a style choice, I don't know. But that's how I ended up choosing the rhesus macaque as my reference. Okay, let's get some arms attached. The monkey is looking much better this time around. The legs already look right, and now I've just got to put some arms on and make sure that I don't mess it up. So I start off with some little noodles here, some coils that I've rolled out generally to the right size and shape, and then I'm going to attach them and actually do more of the sculpting after they're attached. If I try to do too much detail before I get it attached, I run the risk of messing it up as I'm attaching it. And already this arm is looking so much better than the first set of arms that I did. But one thing I noticed is that I had made the mistake of giving the monkey more human-like qualities in its back. I'd made the back really flat, whereas when I looked at the profile pictures of the monkey, the back is more hunchback looking. And it doesn't look wrong on the monkey, right? But it would look wrong on a human. That's one of those common mistakes that I think we all can be guilty of, is giving animals more human-like characteristics, and not in an anthropomorphic way, not in a like I'm drawing a werewolf or a Saturday morning Looney Tunes kind of way. In a mistake way, like when you do a dog portrait but you give it human eyes instead, because animals are different, right? We can't see the whites of their eyes normally. Their proportions are different, and even though the monkey is the most similar to humans out of really any animal, they're still quite different. But all that to say, I had to make some adjustments to the shoulders and to the back because they sit more hunched, and I think that's because they can also walk on all fours, whereas humans aren't designed to walk on all fours. But back to what I'm doing here. So you'll notice that I had cut off the bottom portion of the arm from like the elbow down and was just working on the upper arms because it got kind of stretched out when I was sculpting the shoulder more. And so I'm just getting that shoulder and back corrected before I add on the bottom half of the arms. And I'm also working on the chest a little bit here because, again, unlike humans, they have more of that barrel chest like other animals have. And now that that looks right, let's just straighten up his posture a little bit. He was looking a little too somber. I need him looking up more, a little more curiosity to his posture. There we go. Much better. Okay, now let's put this little rainbow of arms on him. That looks right. And then I'm going to roll out this coil for his tail. I'm using a little trick here that I learned from another YouTuber where you twist the coil kind of like a candy wrapper. And that helps if your coil is going flat or getting messed up. It helps it get back into round. I'm rolling out this nice long coil. I want it to be longer than the final tail will be. That way I can trim off however much I need. You can't really add on to a coil, but I can definitely always cut it shorter. So let's go ahead and get that attached right here. And then I'm going to play around with the position of the tail. Now in my mind, I'm envisioning the tail wrapping around the front and Ritsu holding it kind of like a security blankie. But in the reference, you can see it kind of waves around behind Ritsu. So I tried both ways, but I really didn't like the tail wrapping around behind, either stylistically or sculpturally. When you're adding a thin attachment to a pot or a sculpture like this, you want it to have multiple points of contact of attachment back to the main body. If you have too much of this long, thin piece sticking off of a pot, it's very likely to break off. And so when I wrapped the tail behind Ritsu, it wasn't enough points of contact for me to feel comfortable with it being a sturdy sculpture. And I felt like I got more of the personality I wanted by wrapping the tail around the front. So it was a win-win. More points of contact, a safer sculpture, and better expression. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach the lower half of the arms, and I want to get them positioned just right so that they look like they're holding the tail like a security blanket. So I try a couple different positions with the arm before I fully attach it, and then I really start to sculpt the elbow as I make that attachment and get the arm in the right position. Then you can see I'm playing with the hand here, trying out some different positions, what angle should it be holding the tail at. And then I'm going to attach the other arm, and I'll play around with that hand position some more. So the hands aren't going to get a lot more detailed than this. I'm not going to show individual fingers. On the feet, I made a slight indentation to show the big toe. Back when I started making these sculptures, I decided to keep the sculptures very minimalistic, so there's not a lot of detail. I'm not doing like fur or eyes or anything like that, so I'm completely relying on body posture to express any emotion. We're gonna finish connecting the elbow, and then I'm gonna work on the tail a bit more. Anyone with a pet knows how expressive the tail is, telling you what the animal is thinking. And so I need to make it a little bit shorter, so I'm just pinching a little bit off here, and then I'm playing around with, should it be curved down, should it be curved up, back further, more forward. I ended up kind of doing like this, is going down but coming back up, because I felt like going down and up expressed that more tentative emotion, that kind of like hopefulness but also anxious, which are really the emotions you get from reading the manga and looking at the original drawing that I was using as a reference. And that's something I've tried to do with all of the sculptures that I've made so far. I've tried to give them this sense of hope and curiosity, but also incorporate the other points of those characters' individual personalities. Whether that's anxious like Ritsu, or confident, or shy, aggressive, or playful. I want each of them to express their individual emotions, but I also want them to feel like a set, like they go together. And so in order to create unity, they all need to be a little bit hopeful, a little bit curious on top of their own personality. The other things that hopefully make them feel like a set is that they're all made out of terracotta. You've probably noticed that the rat is darker than the boar and the rabbit, and I don't know how the monkey's gonna come out, which is unfortunate, and I'll tell you how that happened in a minute. But I've also done some other things to try to make them feel like they go together, including how they're finished. On each of them, I've used a golden stain to brush on some highlights, and then I've dipped them all in a low-fire clear glaze. So how did my sculptures end up being slightly different colors? It's weird because they're all made out of terracotta, the same bag of clay, but they got fired differently since I made the sculptures at different times. That's one of the big no-nos that I shouldn't have done here, is that I've made these sculptures over multiple years, and so they didn't all get fired the same way. When I was making them, I didn't realize that the bisque temperature that they got fired to could so drastically change the final color of the clay. And since I didn't need the sculptures to be identical, I figured I could make one now and then make one later when I feel like it again. I wasn't worried too much about matching the sizes because it's low fire clay, it wasn't going to shrink as much. So I figured I could just make the sculptures a little bit bigger than the final size that I wanted, and they would all end up being close to the same size. And that part did work. I just didn't know that the public studio I was working in was going to change their firing schedule for their low fire clays. And so, unfortunately, the colors don't exactly match. Well, my mistake. When I got the first sculpture back that didn't match, at first I was upset and I did some investigating to figure out why. That's how I know that they changed their firing schedule. I thought about remaking all the sculptures so that they could be all fired together and be identical in color, but I decided it wasn't worth it to me. If I had been doing this as a commission, I would definitely start over and fire them all together so that they were the same. But it's just for me. I don't mind the variation in the color, and it tells a story and it's a lesson learned. And now it's the final step. I just need to write my name on the bottom. If you like seeing my work, you can also check me out on Instagram, Arkansas Potter there as well. And you can also check out my store at arkansaspotter.com. Links in the description below. I'm really happy with how he came out. I hope you like him too. And I'll see you next time.